I almost feel like I want to sigh at the beginning of this episode
Yeah,
to
like I'm gonna
discharge
need
the
some
stress.
air.
I saw your email that came through today. For the listeners, Steph sends a weekly email, and it was, I thought, hey, you're kind of giving all the answers for the podcast episode today. The answer is connection.
Well,
That's
it's
what
one
we
of
need.
them. It's
I know.
one of them, and it repeatedly shows up. But yeah, that's just the state of affairs right now is pretty. I mean, we bumped our recorded episode supposed to be coming out today for this because there's so much going on right now. The impact feels pretty significant. Maybe we should talk about what we're talking about, though.
Well, we're keeping it general because it's not so much about the details of what's happening. This is not about debating politics, although I think it's safe to say we believe that people shouldn't be shot. I mean, I think that's not controversial. Well, it's not controversial here in
Wow.
the UK. Maybe it's a controversial thing to say over there. Can I tell you what's blowing my mind about the
Yes.
whole thing?
Yes.
Is how on Facebook there was a video about what actually happened. And as I read the comments, all of us have watched this video unfold, right? Of somebody being killed. And in the comments, there was everything from that's murder right up to she deserves it because this was Renee.
Yep.
That she deserved it and
I
what do you
know.
expect? Like the two
I know.
extreme ends and everything in the middle. And I looked at it and I was so confused. I was like, how do we all look at the same thing? It's like, do you know about the white and gold dress and the blue and black dress that broke
Yes.
the internet?
Yes.
It's like that, but like scary with people dying.
Right. Like higher
But
stakes.
yes, but it's the same concept with
Yeah.
this divide between people where we're actually seeing it. We can
Wait,
understand
describe to
how.
the listeners what you're talking about for those who haven't seen that. Just the concept of what that blue dress thing is.
So with the dress, I don't know when it was, but 10, 15 years ago, somebody puts a photograph of the dress on the internet. If you've not seen it, just look up the blue and black or white and gold dress. And this photo's on the internet, and some people see a blue and black dress, and other people see a white and gold dress. I mean, it's not even like arguing about shades of blue or between blue and green. It seems so different and so confusing that at the time it just blew our minds. We didn't have
Yeah.
enough stuff going viral. Like it took
It
over
couldn't have been
everything then.
AI.
Yeah. Do you remember if you saw blue and black or white and gold?
I don't remember which. We
Hmm.
should we should do it.
Yeah, let me show you this one.
I got it. I I can't see it any other way but the way I see it, but I feel like obviously the way I'm seeing it is right.
Well, you're going to have to disclose to me how you're seeing it.
It's white and gold.
Yes, okay, we're on the same page there. I
Okay.
knew you and I would be in alignment.
We believe people shouldn't be shot.
Yeah, yes. And that the dress was white and gold.
What you're talking about though is actually to me the most disconcerting thing about the world right now. When I say the world feels on fire, when I feel this way, it's not even just the things happening, it's the people. It's the way that as an American too, like that the people in my own, like my neighbors and the people here feel so violently incongruent with one another. And what makes me emotionally unhinged about this most days is our Facebook comments. It is going into the conversations about the news and realizing that what I would have assumed is humanity isn't. Like it's like that there are people saying things that it's not just a matter of differences of opinion, because I'm certainly used to that in terms of the work that you and I do in body image, right? There's a lot of an intuitive eating and the differences of opinions about what works for one person versus what harms another. And there's lots of fielding different perspectives there. That can be hard too, but it's not confusing.
Yes.
Whereas this is one of those things that when I go into these comments and I see the hate and the complete missing of one another and almost the way that you can't possibly have a conversation like this and see another person, it's like there's a refusal to see things. And I suppose that part of that is how social media is set up. You can't have a back and forth conversation.
Hmm.
It's like, who's going to dominate here? the lack of nuance, the many different offshoots of the ways that conversations can take place, the complexity, but also the simplicity of this lack of what I perceive as this lack of humanity, and the way that that makes me feel like ugh, distrust in my fellow man. And also in I suppose part of that distrust is like, are we not, what are we each seeing? I'm confused about what reality is. I'm confused about how we're seeing this so differently, and what people believe, and the misunderstandings there. And I guess what it says about values and our egos need to protect those values.
How familiar are you with quantum physics?
You act like that's something that people are just familiar with.
To be fair,
Yeah.
though, I can't remember who it was. Some brainy scientist said, if you think you understand quantum physics, you don't.
Yeah. I know that much.
But so there is like this, not an idea, there is a reality that matter is not as it appears to us. Like it's
Yeah.
mostly empty space, and how particles behave differently depending on whether they're being observed or not.
Yes.
So there are theories about what does that actually mean about reality. And one of the theories that is that it's like a hologram, that you need consciousness for the world to exist because we project this hologram on outwardly. That to me right now makes so much sense.
I know.
Because we're all watching a different hologram playing out.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for me to feel like we are inhabiting the same planet. And I feel like that a lot with all kinds of things and debates that you might see online, where people seem to have, from my perspective and my values, I see them as having very, again, I use the word hate, but they would never use the word hate.
Right.
You know, so when we say
Yes.
that's hate speech, they'll go, this isn't hate speech. We're pointing out something that is,
Yeah.
we're making a point here. So there's a disagreement straight away there. So yeah, this is all a hologram. So maybe it's fine. We're gonna wake up. We're gonna wake up from the simulation any day now, Steph. It's gonna be fine.
You think we're going to wake up? It actually reminds me a lot of my kids, right? So my youngest, who's 8, and then my middle, who's 11, almost 12, they fight a lot these days, the two of them in particular. And it's one of those things where by the time it reaches me, like by the time they come running downstairs to be like, Mom, she's this, she took this, and one's crying and the other's mad. And it's like, what happened here? And you try to trace back what actually transpired so you could figure out, well, what's right and what's wrong, or like, and I'm not, silly enough to believe there is ever just right and wrong, but just what is the perspective of this person and the perspective of this person, and how do we help them see each other? And sometimes I cannot find it, because you think that it's started somewhere, but it started in different places for different people, where my middle daughter is like, well, she did this, and this is what inspired me to then do this back. Elise, my youngest, is like, no, but before that, you did this. And she's like, yeah, but that wasn't part of, and like the perspective of what the story is completely different. It's almost like when you understand the defense of the person, you're like, oh, I can understand then why you interpreted this that way if you were on the defense. But if you weren't, then this is a different story. And I think that so much of the macro is the micro and the micro is the macro. Isn't that quantum physics as well? Or is that just physics? I think we're a culture of so much infighting based on personal ideas about the wrongs that we've all, can I even say these things? Am I allowed? Am I one day they're going to come for me? I don't know. Like that the people in charge of this country feel insecure or insignificant in some way and are acting that out in these bigger ways, and the breaches and violations that we all perceive, and that impacting the way we're seeing the story. Anyway, all that to say is, what does being sane look like in that? Is it saner to be distressed by this because there's no resolution? There's no way for me to find out if Alex or Elise are in the right or wrong. There's like, I mean, although there though.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But the complexity of it can be really overwhelming. And are we reacting appropriately to an asinine situation?
Reacting appropriately. What do you mean? Oh, you mean when we're in it?
Yeah. Our dysregulation collectively, our anger and all of this, because how can you keep a level head in situations that aren't level?
Yeah. There's an idealistic part of me that goes, we should just all be really trying to understand. I want to understand the other
I know.
side.
Me too.
Because I actually think there's safety for me in that, in understanding,
Yeah.
going, oh, okay, so I am, oh gosh, I don't know if I should say this. I'll start saying it. So what I'm, so I,
We'll
I'm
take all
trying to
this
like
out, but
go through all the
listeners.
consequences. I
Mm.
understand why some people would be anti-abortion. Like I understand in their frame of reference with their values and what they believe that that is. And that that isn't always, I think, that the motivation for a lot of those people isn't specifically about controlling women's bodies. There's an outcome of that, but if you really believed something was murder, you'd feel like a whole other kind of way of it. The argument is
Right.
kind of where like life and consciousness and what it means to terminate the early stages of what could turn into a person.
Yeah.
So in those situations, whilst I think that abortion should be accessible and legal, I can look at people who are opposed and I can go, I see why they would feel like that. This is my view, but I see why they would feel like that. There are other areas where I struggle. So when I listen to your president or hashtag not your president talking, and he sounds like a 5-year-old trying to tell his parents something that he did at preschool that day, and it's not even making sense. And he's saying things that are objectively not true about
Mm.
history and things like that. And his inability to articulate and communicate.
Yeah.
Communication is such a high value of mine. And
Yeah.
I don't think anybody should be in any kind of power or leadership position if they cannot communicate. That is dangerous.
Yeah.
And so when I think about that and I think about other people that somehow that's okay with them, isn't it crazy that like this is just shows our values? I find that impossible to believe that people could have those different views about the importance of communication, but I could understand how someone could have different views over a bigger topic like
Yeah.
abortion.
Well, I'm in this unique position, maybe not, I don't think it's actually quite unique at all, but my family sits on that side of the fence. So I have access to some perspective of the other side that we try to have these conversations around how do you see it the way that you see it. And I will tell you this, and I am guilty as charged of it as well, that what most of the time happens in these conversations is that the open-mindedness of the question about like, how are you seeing this? This is how I see it. Here's my values. How are you seeing it? On both ends usually becomes not a response to that question, but a defense. What might happen in that, when I'm thinking of you asking that and thinking, how would my father respond to that? And I know he would say, first of all, he would say, well, Biden couldn't communicate, is what he would say. It would turn into it like a deflection
Hmm.
of the defense, right? Which is not answering the question. It's because I would be like, all right, well, if he couldn't communicate, then I would hold him to the same question. Like, I don't need to defend Biden. Like, I don't need it to be an
Hmm.
identity. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's, I think, huge in political discussions. And this animosity of this is more a matter of like, I want to be right and I want you to be wrong rather than I want to learn.
Hmm.
And secondly, it would become a difference of values in that I know that my father would say, he can't communicate and he would recognize the like you don't call a reporter stupid. This is not presidential, it's not respectful. You need to make sense when you speak, all this stuff. But at the heart of it, communication is secondary to policy and the things you're doing to make the country better. To him it would be like communication isn't as important as something else. And
Hmm.
this is the argument, right? Like one thing is more important than another. And so it does come down to this difference in values of what we're
Yeah.
saying. And I think you could still continue to argue that, like, how important communication is and what the dangers of miscommunication are. But you'll always have, people saying, well, it's not as dangerous as what they're doing over here or
Yeah.
what you're.
Yeah. 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 So how do we navigate these times? Obviously, you're in America, which is kind of in the heat of it all, right? You're near the furnace. And I know we had a little chat about this before we started recording, but this idea of, I think, firstly, something that's coming up with my American clients is how informed do I want to be? Some of them are recognizing that they are falling into those holes of overconsumption of news and opinion, because let's face it, most news is opinion, not
Yeah.
actual news. Other people feeling guilty for avoiding news as well.
Yeah.
How do we navigate that or begin to think and make sense about where we place ourselves in that between being informed and to what extent is it okay
Yeah.
to protect ourselves. Because I also know some people who get very angry at people who avoid the news because they think that's burying their head in the sand.
Yeah. This is where those offshoots come. It's like
Yeah.
there's so many different layers of this. The first thing I'll say is that those that avoid can be in a freeze where it's like they're not able to handle the overwhelm of it. Sometimes I have to turn off things because I can feel that I'm completely losing connection with my whole self. But it's like the oxygen mask thing. I think we need to have more respect for what a person can hold. But I do also see, and again, it's a perspective thing, like advocacy matters and your words matter and your awareness matters. There's a big difference between I don't think it's important versus I can't hold it. I think it's a day-to-day situation around how to manage it. There are times where I can hear the news, read things, watch videos, and maintain some sense of like, I can listen to these perspectives and I can even form opinions about them. And then I can turn it off and I can wash my face and go to sleep and function. And there's other times where I can feel myself becoming so enraged that I can't let it go and it's got a hold of me and now I'm like some kind of spiral with it. Understanding yourself and understanding where you are when this is going on, because it's so easy to get sucked into the dysregulation of it. And once you're in that, it's very hard to have boundaries with it. So and it changes day to day. So like I don't necessarily do like a check-in with myself before I go, but there's some kind of overarching sense of, you can feel when it's starting to cross a threshold that you're going into a zone with something, and that like the practice of pulling yourself back. The other thing that I do is I try to watch multiple perspectives. Sometimes that makes it worse.
Does that mean Fox News as well?
So I don't watch Fox News because I don't trust them. And I've already investigated that. So I know I don't trust them. But I will watch people talking about different perspectives of things, not even necessarily news outlets, but just perspectives, like thoughts on social media. And if I scroll by somebody who's saying something that I don't like, I will watch it because I want to understand more. If I'm coming across a perspective that isn't mine, I actually do want to understand that, even if I reject it. And I think keeping that critical thinking of things like that I'm hearing, kind of like, okay, did this happen? Did this happen? What's the facts on this? What's the facts on this? And sometimes you can't find them, to be honest. And that's probably the most confusing part, but just to keep myself as informed as I can be.
There are so many, probably thousands of ways of looking at this and stances and nuances. I'm thinking particularly when the idea of talking about this as an episode came up, many people are walking around with that sense of threat hanging over them. And there's a weird mix, I think, when something's going on at the national, global level, whereas the zooming in of our day-to-day lives, everything's the same.
Mm.
And then we zoom out and we have this story and this knowledge of this narrative of what's going on. And everything's scary again. And I think we've spoken about this before on our previous podcast, but around sometimes the idea of when to zoom in to those smaller things, whether it's connection with family, whether it's housework, or just the daily things in most people's lives. Is this right to say? Hasn't changed.
Yeah.
There's just this big threat and the uncertainty carrying the uncertainty. I just think sometimes it's helpful to think of it as in zooming in or zooming out.
Yeah.
With something like this. So it's like sometimes in my life when something small is aggravating me, specific to me, like my back pain, for example, I might zoom out to get perspective. I mean, not looking at the global crisis stuff, but that zooming out and that zooming in. So the ability to change our focus is, I think, and one of the most helpful things, but I'm also mindful about the potential of that not being accessible to everybody.
The ability to zoom in and out.
Yeah.
Well, part of what I think becomes the barrier to that accessibility is our own judgment. So I guess I'm thinking of the people who might feel like if I focus on my life and I just take a shower and go to the grocery store or read my book, that I'm not paying attention to the things I'm supposed to be paying attention to. There's a guilt, that survivor guilt almost of of that. When in fact, we could look at that as orienting, like that we're reorienting because we've gotten too far on one side or another. And so to come back into balance, to be able to be an advocate or to take a breath, that in order to get there, we have to reorient. We have to sort of find those touchstones of where I am. And if that means like I'm a person in a house that needs to clean this room, or I need to make this dinner, I need to eat this meal, that's a way of not ignoring something, but of reorienting to what's real, what's here and now, so that we can hold the perspective of what else is going on. Because when you aren't oriented, you can't hold any of it. Your attention becomes sucked into badness, doom, like gloom, or numbness, and in order to stay aware of everything, the good and the bad, the safe and the unsafe, we have to be oriented. And so it's like, do you go to the eye doctor? Do you have good eyes?
Occasionally, I go to the opticians.
Uh,
We
oh,
don't,
the
we
eye
never say
doctor.
eye doctor.
You don't?
No.
Really?
I don't even think they are doctors.
I think,
Maybe that,
huh?
no, I'm not
No,
sure
they
that
are. Some of them. Oh, so,
I don't think so. Not in the UK. We have, I think we might
huh.
have opticians. And then if you had something like seriously wrong with your eyes, like cataracts or something like that, and you needed surgery, then you would go
Yeah.
and see
They
a
have to be
doctor.
doctors. Yes,
Yeah.
there's different kinds.
Yeah.
I call it the eye doctor. I go to the eye doctor. My eyes are terrible. And then, but if you're familiar with it, like you put your chin in the thing
Hmm.
and then, they put different lenses on. And at first it's like super blurry and they turn it one way and it becomes clear. And then but they can also do that on the opposite side. And it feels like when we're out of focus or too in focus, there's a knob that turns that offers the clarity. And that's kind of what it feels like sometimes to be like, I need to remember where I am. I need to do the functional things so that I can see farther out, or be able to see closer to me, either one. But there's a lot of guilt, I think, in the way that's doing something wrong. It's not paying close enough attention. And I get it, because it's like, well, it's very easy to stop paying attention.
Yeah. I'm also thinking about the idea of mobilizing that fear as well, because that experience of being in fear and being helpless, that's panic, that's trapped. That is going to throw you into a shutdown or a flight response or something like that. And what do you think of, again, this is a bit of a contentious question. Do you think that there is a moral obligation
Mm.
to mobilize when something like this is happening?
I
As
don't
in to
like
take
thinking
action
about
and do something?
moral
Yeah.
obligations. I think that we need doers. I also think we need lots of things. I don't believe there's one way to respond. I think the nature of the village is multiple roles in the village. And there are those who act and love to act and have a nervous system that supports acting. And there's people who support, play supporting roles here, or there. And there's people who represent the collapse, right? It takes all kinds to make the world go round. What's that phrase? And I think everybody has a role, and there's a reason why everybody's system does a different thing.
Mm.
That's what I
Yeah.
think. And
Yeah.
you know, it's the same way I've reconciled being an introvert, like, or things like that, where it's like, not everybody can be doing that. Some people need, or I want to be a writer and I want to reflect rather than leading a charge, and
Hmm.
that we need everybody.
Well, I was watching a reel on social media the other day, and it was drawing comparisons to Germany in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And it was saying how it broke the people down into the perpetrators, the bystanders, the upholders, then you got the resistors and the rescuers, kind of depending on where they were. And 90% of people were bystanders.
Wow. Yeah.
This was in Nazi Germany when this was all going on. Only 3% were perpetrators. Again, it's a analogy where if there's one Nazi sitting at the table with 9 people who don't share those views and they all stay silent,
Yeah.
that's the equivalent of 10 Nazis at the table.
Yes. Yes.
And I see things like that and it really challenges me because like conceptually I'm like, yeah, I kind of agree. And I also know that my response tends to go more into a freeze. I can very easily collapse into helplessness. So then sometimes I avoid that feeling of
Yeah.
helplessness. And then there's some self-judgment that I'm not braver.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between being silent or what is what I'm trying to say? There's a difference between speaking up and naming things versus crusading, right? And so I think we need crusaders who are going to the front lines or writing to the senators. And then there's also like the conversations you have at home and the ways in which you speak up. This isn't just in this scenario. For example, like when people make fat jokes, I used to be like not in agreement with it, but I wouldn't say anything. Whereas now I'll be like, no, like that's not something I'm not going to participate in that. Am I going to, I'm at the front lines of like the body trust organization? No. But, it's just like the ways in which we can represent in our smaller circles too. And I think that there is a difference between I'm ignoring something or I'm keeping quiet about something versus I'm not crusading or I'm not at the front lines of leadership on this. But you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure people have different opinions on that.
Yeah. Well, it feels like everybody could, it feels like, interesting, I just said that, but my mind's going, and I haven't questioned this yet, but it feels like everybody could copy and paste a letter to, in the UK, it would be like MP, local government, whatever the equivalent would be in the US.
Yeah.
That doesn't require putting yourself in any risk at all, but it's pulling yourself out of, I wanted
Inertia.
to use the word inertia. I wanted to use the word apathy, but I think that is a sweeping statement to say that people are apathetic. But I think sometimes there's a tendency to not want to look at the thing that's scary,
Yeah.
you know? It's
That's,
avoidance. Yeah.
yeah, which to me is different. I mean, I have a complicated relationship with avoidance. Like you can also well, okay, not here. I'm gonna spoon boom that because that's not relevant here. That's why I think there's like a scaffolding amount of like what leadership is. I think we need to broaden our definitions of that. Like when I hear like I need to do something, there's this part of me that's like, I'm like, do I need to pack my suitcase and march to Washington, D.C.? Like I can't do that. Like, and then there's this other part of me that's like, no, like you can, and I found websites that I could, where I could do something literally from my computer to advocate. I'm like, all right, I'm going to post about this in my newsletter. Like I'm going to provide a link on my newsletter. Like there's ways in which I can do things in a way that is still giving me a sense of like, I don't need to be helpless. And I also don't need to necessarily march in Washington. And by the way, I recognize that somebody might be like, yeah, you should be marching in Washington. Like I hear that in the back of my head too. Like, this is a time for actually being more like stepping out of your comfort zone. And I think that is valid. Like if we don't step out of our comfort zones and if we're always doing the safest thing, there's a risk. Especially when it comes to the extremities of certain situations, right? And I remember during the LA fires last year, I did things like donate. That was pretty much a lot of what I did. I had some friends in LA that I, spoke to regularly and supported like on this very micro level. But this feels like maybe that's not enough. Like maybe we need like the bigger but it's like, what's a bigger problem? There's lots of stuff going on in countries around the world all the time that are, it I don't want to rank it, but like, that there's other horrific things happening. It's like, does it matter just because it's in my backyard now? You know what I mean? Like, why am I not doing those things for those other countries where it's not even making the news? Like and that's inviting that becomes overwhelming when you think about like these things. And there's a book by, Oliver Berkman? It's actually about time management on the surface, but it is about so much more. It's about the prioritization of our energy. And he talks about how we can't give our energy as like all of our energy to all of the things because there's not enough to go around. And so it's important that we're selecting what's important to us. And that's why we all do have different values so that we can represent different things and put our energies to different things. And I think it's about sort of looking at our personal questioning of, is this a cause that feels that I want to give my energy to? And for highly sensitive people and empathetic people, like that can feel like everything. It's like I want to give my time, my energy to everything, and to be able to regulate that energy and be like, I'm going to put it here because I have capacity to do here. And if we're all doing things within our capacity and we're not turning a blind eye, I think there is like a natural way that humanity works like this. But maybe the point is more to yours of like, where is where is something a blind eye? Where are we avoiding something as opposed to relegating energy differently?
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like an impossible question to answer. I don't even know. Because I also know that I'm someone who's vulnerable to that thinking of I could always be doing more. I feel like that in everything. Whether it's how often I play with the cats or the
Yeah.
world is on fire, like wherever it is, it's such a pattern of mine.
Hmm.
But what it often does is then leads to a kind of paralysis
Yeah.
where I end up doing less than if I just gave myself a break and I would just go, just do what you can.
That's
And actually
interesting.
genuinely ask myself, what could I do in this moment? Yeah, cool.
I wonder if that relates to self-trust in some ways because I don't feel that way. I don't feel like I guilt myself or feel like I should be doing more, except where I should. So when I have a thought in my head, no, it's true. Like there's times where it comes across my zone of thinking where I'm like, you really should be doing more here. And I don't say should I'm not shoulding myself like a jerk, but I just am having this sense of like what the actual role of guilt is. You know what I mean? Like that there's this call in myself to do more, to be like, let's push a little harder here. And when that will come into my zone of awareness, and if I do have the capacity to push, I will. And I trust myself to do that. I will do what my capacity asks me to do. But there's times where I'm like, I don't have the capacity for that. And I don't feel guilty when that happens. Then I do the best I can do. And it's that whole thing about like, if you have 30% and you give 30%, you've given 100%. I believe that. And so when I have 100%, I give it. When I don't give myself crap about it because I believe that I feel like I have this scientific respect for the capacity part. Like if I don't have it and then I can't and I can do whatever I can in the capacity that I do have.
I don't trust myself to accurately discern my capacity.
Okay.
So I don't know if
Huh.
I've got 30%, 50%, or 70%. I don't know.
Well, what is something that you've had 100%, and that doesn't have to be 100%, but what have you had a large capacity for that you're sure of?
Um, what have I had a large capacity? I'm not sure I quite understand the question when you say what have
Like
I
you
had
have
what?
a YouTube video out every week and you have for
Yes.
years and years and years.
Yes.
So I'm sure that at different weeks you have different capacities to put it out, but clearly you have some kind of overarching capacity to be consistent with that.
Yes. Because it's such a part of a habit,
Yeah.
but for me, it's so dangerous when I lose a habit because it takes so much energy to get it back again.
Yeah.
Because I normally do it on a Thursday morning. So if I can't do it on Thursday, I will look at other places in my diary. And if I am really rammed, because also I need to do it when it's daylight. So that's a
Yeah.
little bit, and to be honest, it has to be the morning really for me, because that's just the way my brain works. So if I don't have a morning where it's daylight, then I'll go, okay, I guess I can't do it. And it's not a big deal. But yeah, just with so many other things, smaller things, like when I can't get myself, I feel like I'm having the same conversations I've been having with you for years.
Well,
Like
maybe.
when I can't get myself out for a walk. And I'm like, I do have the capacity, but I feel blocked and I feel resistance. And that's feeling resistance is different to not having the
It
capacity.
is. It is. And that would be a different podcast episode. But what actually you've actually branched off into the idea of perfectionism. And maybe that's more to the point of like maybe capacity with the way we perceive capacity is in a perfectionistic way. And that if we give ourselves less expectation of what it's supposed to look like to do or to act or to advocate, that we get more done. We actually have more capacity. Um, but you have a value of, in your YouTube channel of your message and I'm sure it's personal and collective, right? Like there's different values there, but you've concentrated your efforts into it and you do what you have to do to get it done, even if it's not perfect. And that's where your energy goes. Like that's your place that's your advocacy,
Well, okay, so that is half a day a week, right? There's 6.5 days on the other side of that. My mind really resists the idea that there's anything perfectionistic in the way I'm talking about capacity, because I feel like the bar is pretty low.
No, I'm saying that. That's my point.
I thought you were saying, but as being perfectionistic in terms of how I view capacity.
No, you said that you don't do capacity. You said that you don't ask yourself to be perfectionistic. So like maybe that's part of the key of why it works because you're willing to do
Okay,
it imperfectly.
yeah, but just on the YouTube front, a few weeks ago, I was so exhausted. Like I was just, I it took a lot of effort to do it. And as I was editing the video, I thought, and I don't often think this because I normally think everything I say is brilliant, of course, but I was watching it and I was like, I'm bored, and I don't normally feel like this bored when I'm editing myself. And then somebody commented about how boring it was.
Oh, I hate when reality is proven
And
true.
I just agreed with them. I said, "Do you know what?" I said, "It's funny you say that." I said, because I had the same thought when I was editing it.
Also,
I
that's
said,
rude.
a little bit. Yeah. To be fair, people did jump to my defense. And I just said, "Do you know what? Yeah, I didn't really have the energy this week." But I thought, I didn't mind. Yeah, of course, it never feels great when someone says it, but I'm like, I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's hard to know, am I just being critical of myself when I'm saying this isn't great or something like that? But most of the time, because I don't think I set the bar that high, I don't have to grapple with that too much. But yeah.
Which probably increases your capacity for it. I don't
Mm.
know. How do we discharge stress from the body?
Yeah. Oh, well, my somatic coach friend.
Yeah,
Oh,
I can
yeah.
tell you. I've been doing it a lot.
What have you been
Um,
doing?
I have been pacing my house. I do anyway, most of the time. But like yesterday, for example, I had a lot of energy moving through my body from watching, like, I don't know. It's like really, Steph, all you need to do is have boundaries with social media. But I've been on there, and sometimes I'm on there for a completely different reason, and it assaults you, And so I had this moment where I was like feeling all of these feelings about the what I was watching, and then all of course all of what my storytelling was doing around that, and the ways in which we attach what's going on in the world also to the things that are going on personally, right? Like there's so much parallel, there's so many similar themes, and I could feel myself like doing this, and it was actually a time where I potentially would have at one point in my life like started grazing, started going back and forth to the kitchen, um to eat a little of this, to eat a little of that, because there's something that when we're grazing, when we're sort of doing that, like we're walking like back and forth and back and forth. And so I got up and I just started going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth from my kitchen to my family room, back and forth. And I could feel as I was doing that, like, and I kept taking breaths, and I kept like, I was kind of shaking out my hands, and I was like, this is exactly what I need to be doing right now. Like, I just need to be discharging this energy on like a random Wednesday afternoon, like home alone. Like, it wasn't like I needed to go to a class and move it out or even go to the gym or anything. I just needed to move about. And I've been noticing that a lot for that fight or flight energy, like just the things you can do in your own home, in your pajamas, right? Like that just get the body physically moving. And like breath is part of that sometimes. I mean, there's different modalities of doing that, but I think it's really just comes down to like, how can you shake it out, And that's different than collapse energy, of course. But where I was feeling it as fight or flight energy, I was just moving around, and I've been noticing myself doing that a lot over the past week or two.
Hmm. I'm always interested in what different things work for different people. It sounds like such an obvious thing to say. Because when you're talking about that, I know that when I'm quite stressed, I'm drained of energy. So it brings me down. But there is an agitation in my body, but it's not one that drives me to want to necessarily move.
Yeah.
And I've recently, actually, in the last couple of weeks, returned to breath work again and found it so helpful because, again, overwhelm, stress, all of that, like your breathing is right up here
Yeah.
in the top of your chest.
Yeah.
Um, and so just spending sometimes 5 minutes just doing belly breaths, like just brings such mental clarity. I think what we're doing, and you'll correct me if I'm oversimplifying this, is reassuring the nervous system that here and now in this moment we're safe.
Yeah.
Like maybe we're in our homes or we're on our sofas, we're in our environment and we're safe right now at the body level. There's
Yes.
always going to be an anticipation, but it's trying to ground in the safety of the moment, would you say?
Yes, but what is going to feel safe in the body will be different depending on what state you're in. So when you're talking about I don't need to walk around, it's because you're not in fight or flight. You're going into like the freeze, right? So all of the energy, we have the same amount of energy. The agitation is there, but in one state, it is looking to be discharged because it's looking to either run or fight something to feel safe. Whereas in another state, it's feeling like I have all this energy and but I'm not safe to move. So I just need to breathe, like to find to like that's why there's different things for different people, because the safety in the body actually isn't about the mind. It's about what is safe in the body right now. Is it to stay more still, or is it to move around and get out of there? And
Mhm.
that's a personal experience of like where you are.
Yeah.
We didn't even get to talk about AI.
We didn't get to talk about AI.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What about AI?
Because I feel like that's another place where my I'm like, and it's also goes in line with perspective. Like, what is is the world? I feel sometimes like the AI is like the world on fire, like the same thing. It's like, what is happening? What's real? Like, and is this safe or not? I just feel take the whole conversation and apply it to AI if you struggle with that.
Okay. Listen again. And when we're talking about the world being on fire, just change that for AI. I'm not feeling too panicked about AI
I
at the
am.
moment. I
Well,
mean,
panicked, but
no, you know what I mean. It's not on my concern
no,
list. Again, I'm not saying that there couldn't be problems or
I
there may
think
not be. There'll be all
I,
kinds of things coming this way, but it's not formulated enough. And maybe that's something for me when I might feel anxious or stressed by bigger events, like sort of wider threats. It needs to be more formed. So even when Trump's threatening to invade Greenland, there's an optimistic part of me that's going, that's not going to happen. They're not going to let that happen. Okay. And that is a naivety, sure, sure. But I do think that my natural optimism, again, it's a pattern that I play out. Just like the pattern of never feeling like I'm doing enough, there is a pattern where I think I'm at the optimistic end of the spectrum.
yeah.
So that's just where my brain is going to go to. And I can cognitively look at that and go, yep, that may not be true. It's almost like the felt sense of my body is like, it's going to be okay. Like something's going to intervene.
I don't know.
He's
Maybe
an old guy. Maybe I have a heart.
pessimist then.
Everyone's going to wake up and see the light of day. The
Oh, see, I think
simulation's going to end. It's all fine.
I don't think so. I think I think that the like lack of critical thinking is part of the problem of like the political stuff. And good for you. That makes you happier. It makes me.
Well, it's not, there's always like, however we're approaching it, there's always the other side that we can
Yes.
question and go,
Yes.
actually, I'm being optimistic, but here's the downsides of
Right.
that.
It's
And
not, there's not one right or wrong.
no, here's the potential risk of being in that camp. And likewise, if you are somebody who veers well into pessimism, the risk of harm and overwhelm to yourself is really high. So when there's uncertainty, our natural inclination to things will always work out okay, or things are going to be awful, and the whole spectrum of that, we're going to automatically filter what's going on through those lenses.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And it's about dividing attention in multiple places. There's not one right or wrong most of the time.
Except we're right. So, isn't it crazy? Being a human being. Wow, what a trip. Okay. On that note.
Yeah. Anyway.
The world is still spinning. We'll see you next month.
That's right.